Hello and welcome to the Book Channel, the place to be for all book lovers and writers. I'll be interviewing 3 authors on each programme about their books, and we'll have great advice from our experts should you have a burning desire to write or you think you have a book inside you. And remember, everything we do on the show will be on the website thebookchannel.tv. On the programme today, I'll be talking to property magician Simon Zutshi.
We got to #1 property book, #1 business book and #1 personal finance book. So a lot of demand out there for it, and I hope the second book will do just as well.
To the king of online networking, William Bust.
By asking questions that encourage more conversation rather than close it down, you learn more about each other and that helps build the relationship, which is one of the things that networking's all about.
And to Oriel Blanche about her lovely book for children, The Magic Sunglasses.
Samantha, we love you. You're the greatest, her fans screamed.
And our expert today will be Mindy Gibbons-Klein, the book midwife.
I know you really want to write that book. So what's stopping you?
My first guest today is Simon Zutshi. We're talking about his book, Property Magic. Hi Simon, welcome to the show. Now this is the second edition of your book, isn't it? So apart from the first edition having been a bestseller, what prompted you to rewrite it?
Well, I think the first one did very well because most people in the UK want to learn about property and want to own their own property, and that's what we teach people how to do. But the property market changes and it's very dynamic, particularly at the moment, so it's very important to make sure people get up-to-date information because what we do now might be different from what we did 12 months ago, so very important to keep current.
Okay, and so tell me about the bestseller then with the first edition. I think you achieved something pretty good on Amazon.
We got to #1 property book, #1 business book and #1 personal finance book. So a lot of demand out there for it, and I hope the second book will do just as well.
That's a pretty good achievement. So there's lots of myths, aren't there, around property investing. How does your book debunk those myths and help the investor?
Well, one of the biggest things that people don't buy properties, they think they need a large amount of money. They say, oh, I can't afford to buy a property. Well, actually, the way we teach people to buy property is if you do it in the right way, you don't actually need to have a deposit. And the way we do that is by buying well below the market value and use some creative finance. So you don't actually need to have any money to buy. So it means that anybody can do it.
So this below market value thing then, what's that all about?
Well, there are people who need to sell their houses quickly. And it's people who they actually rather sell quickly rather than get the full value for their property. And as long as you do it ethically, so you make sure it's a good solution for them and a good solution for you, it means you can buy without having to put much of your own money in at all.
Okay. One of the chapters in your book talks about buying property ethically. Can you explain that a bit further? Because I think there's a lot of maybe misconceptions around, particularly with companies that do come in and buy below market value, that somehow they're kind of ripping people off.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's it's very important that you understand that there are in any industry you get people who are come and do it unethically. Whereas what I like to do when I look at buying a property, when I teach other people how to do it, it's all about finding out what's really important to the seller. Now, these are people who, for whatever reason, they have to sell quickly. For example, someone might be about to get repossessed. Whereas actually what we could do is we can come in, we could clear the arrears, clear the mortgage and any other debt they have, and they can actually walk away without any debt, without any problems, and we get an ethical solution, they get an ethical solution, so everyone's happy.
And sometimes they actually can stay in the property, is that right?
That's what we call a rent back, yes. And so in the right circumstances, they can stay for as long as they want, as long as they pay the market rent.
Okay. Now you have 5 golden rules in your book, don't you?
I do, yes.
Can you tell us about that? Well, tell us each rule and tell us a bit about each rule.
If you're investing in property, I think there are 5 golden rules. The first one is you should always buy below market value. If you buy below market value, it means you're making profit on the day you buy. And also when the market's coming down, it gives you a bit of a buffer in case values come down further. So in a good market, you might be buying 10 to 15% below market value. In a market where the values are going down, you want to be buying 20 to 40% below market value, which is achievable if you know how to find the right motivated sellers. So that's the first rule, always buy below market value. The next rule is the discount alone isn't enough. It's got to be a property which we call stack up. So it's got to make cash for you. So in other words, the profits that you make is enough, so that the rent that comes in is enough to cover all of the expenses such as interest on mortgages and management fees, etc., such that there's profit left over at the end of each month for you. That's why we invest in property, to get a return. So you've got to make sure there's good cash flow and the property stacks up. In order to achieve that, the third golden rule is a property's got to be in there that's going to have good long-term rental demand. Because the idea of an investment property is that you don't have to pay the mortgage. The tenants you have in the property are actually covering the cost of the ownership for you. So you've got to have a good, strong rental demand. The fourth rule is you need to buy for long term. Property investment is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's get-rich very, very slowly scheme. And the idea is you buy the property and you're holding it for the long-term growth. And in the meantime, someone else is paying for the cost of holding that property. And the fifth rule, which I think is very important, is I believe everyone who's investing in property needs to have a cash buffer. Because the people who you see struggling, investors who do get into difficulty, are ones who buy, they've got no money, they've got no assets behind them, and if they have any problems such as bad tenants or repairs on the property, they've not got the money to cover it, and so they get into difficulty. So you always need to make sure you minimise the risk and have a cash buffer available.
So if you're investing in property, then would you need to have that cash buffer to start with before, because you talk about putting no money down, so you can buy it without actually paying out a deposit, for example. So but you need to have the cash buffer there to start with? Yeah,
the cash buffer could be access to funds in another property, could be a drawdown facility, it could be some actual physical money in the bank, or it could even be a credit card. But you've got to have something to go to cover just in case you have difficulty. So when you normally buy a property as an own home, you might put 10 or 15% in as a deposit. As an investment, it's somewhere between 15 and 25%, depending on the market at the time. So that's a substantial amount of cash normally for the deposit. So you can buy it without a deposit, but I think you do need a little bit or access to some to make sure you cover any potential risks.
Okay. Simon, that's fantastic. I think we could probably talk about this for hours because it's a fascinating subject and there's obviously an awful lot in your book. But thank you very much for coming in today and good luck. I hope it does very well for you. Remember, all of the advice that we give on the show and the author interviews are available after the show on the website thebookchannel.tv.